Welcome back to Workplace 30. Here we've got 3 movies that have crushed their budgets. Just take a look at them and decide for yourself how much over budget each of these movies were. Then we're going to start with example 2, part of section 8.2. Sylvia has a home business selling art. Her average sales are 90 pieces per month. Each piece costs $27.58 to make. Her operating costs are $1,200 a month. If she continues to have 90 prints made and sold each month, what must she charge to break even? So we need to figure out how much it actually costs her to make these 90 prints a month. So if we have 90 of the pieces of art times by the cost that it takes to make each, that gives us a total cost for the art of $2,482.20. But then we have to figure out her total cost. Remember that it also costs $1,200 to keep her business running for the month. So we have to add $1,200 onto that for a total cost of $3,682.20. Now we need to figure out the break-even point. So how much would she have to sell for each piece? So we need to divide this by 90 since she sells 90 pieces. So divide it by 90 and you'll get $40.92 per piece of artwork in order to break even. So now she decides to charge 50 bucks per print just because you need to charge more than your break-even point if you're going to make any money. How much sales must she make to break even in a month? This next part is a typo. That does not matter. So $50 per print. We know that her total expenses are $3,682.20. So we need to divide that by 50 because it's $50 per print. So that gives us 74 prints she needs to sell in order to break even at that price. Part C then says she wants to make a 25% return. So that's what her profit needs to be. How much would she have to charge for each piece then? Again, assuming that she sells 90 pieces per month. So now we have to take her total expenses. So $3,682.20. We need to figure out how much an additional 25% would be on top of that. So there's 2 ways of doing this. The easier one is to times by 1.25 because that means it's 125% of 3,682 or 25% more than her costs. And this will give you $4,602.75. Another way of doing this is you could have multiplied 3,682 by just the 0.25 and then added it to your original cost of 3,682. So now that we know how much she needs to actually reel in, we divide that by 90 to figure out how much she needs to charge per painting. So when you divide it by 90, you get $51.15 per painting. So we're going to start by describing the general pattern of the trends here for activity 8.2, which is analyzing business profit. Note that this is in millions, all of these numbers. So from 2005 to 2009, what is the general trend of the revenue? Does it go up or down? Okay, it goes up. How about the operating costs? It goes up also. Which one goes up more? The revenue actually goes up by a bit more, yes. So both revenue and costs increase. But revenue does more. Not by much, but a bit. Number 2, have the profits for businesses in this field increased or decreased over time? So the profit. So the profits here is in this line, and this is in percentages. You notice that they actually have increased since 2005, so 7.4 from 5.8, but they increased until 2007 and then decreased again. So they've actually gone down since 2007 and 2006. So, but the general trend has been that they increased. But 2007, they've actually gone down since then. What percentage of the operating costs do salary, wages, and benefits represent? So in order to figure this out, we need to figure out our total costs and our total salaries. This comes from adding up all the costs here and then adding up all the salaries. You'll get these totals. Now to figure out the percentage, we need to divide the total salaries into the total costs. So 2,619.60 divided by 8,075.9. And this is going to give us a percentage of about 32.4%. So that's how much the salary makes up the costs. So the business is paying 32% of its costs is its employees. And then we're going to explain how the owner of a business could use this information as a guideline for setting employment wages. So do you think that these wages should fluctuate as his costs fluctuate? So yeah, as your costs fluctuate, just because everything is on an increasing trend, your wages should also be increasing. That way you can make sure you're always paying your employees a fair wage. Then we have activity 8.3, which is graphing a break-even point. So we have Svetlana, who paid $15,150 in startup costs. It costs her $1,275 to operate every month, but she earns $3,655 every month. So let's figure out her earnings over time, just her profit. And your table should look similar to this one. So if you subtract your expenses from what you earned, you should end up with $2,380, and she continues to make that every month as her profit. So her profit will continue to increase as she saves the money from the month before. So then we're going to draw a broken line graph showing her earnings. The horizontal line will show her startup costs. So once you have your graph all labeled, we're going to put on here our startup costs with a horizontal line because the startup costs aren't actually changing. So the startup costs are at $15,150, which should be somewhere in between these two marks here. There should be a horizontal line there. Then we can plot the other line on here. So we know that after 1 month, it's 2,380, 2 months, 4,760. Now the reason we can go up by these numbers is because we're going up by the same amount every time. There's $2,380 between every set of points, so it's okay to use that as your labels. So now let's finish this off by putting another line on here. So what we're looking for here is where the lines cross. And where the lines cross is the amount of time that it will take her to pay off her startup costs. So where does she actually pay off these startup costs? And they meet here, if you bring down your line, at about 6.5 months. And this, again, is approximate because the line here that we made for the startup cost was not exactly on our scale. So this is just an estimate. So we said 6.5 for the answer for this question. But we can also actually calculate this by taking your startup costs, which is $15,150, and dividing them by the amount that you actually bring in per month, which we figured out was $2,380. So if we divide these two, we get exactly 6.4 months that it would take to pay this off. So notice that our estimate with our graph was very close. Then you just have an assignment on page 293, number 4 to 9.